Know this, there are ancient voices that echo in the chambers of your soul, voices not yet heard, gods not yet remembered. There are forces in the human soul that once were known as gods. They were honored in temples, invoked in ritual, and given voice in the mythologies of our ancestors. Today they no longer appear before us in divine form, but their power has not vanished. It has only changed its dwelling place. These presences, once named Zeus, Aphrodite, Hermes, or Dionysus, now move invisibly in the depths of the psyche. They are no less alive than in the ancient world, but because we have forgotten their language, we mistake them for moods, compulsions, or symptoms. What does it mean that they are dormant, not dead, but sleeping, waiting for recognition? A forgotten God does not cease to exist. It only retreats into the unconscious, and there it stirs. One may think oneself entirely rational, free from superstition, guided only by intellect. Yet suddenly one is possessed by rage beyond proportion, by desire that burns irrationally, by a creative impulse that demands expression, or by despair that drags the soul downward. These are the hidden deities at work, speaking in the only way left to them when consciousness no longer remembers. Our age has relegated myth to the status of story, poetry, or entertainment. We imagine we have outgrown the gods, but in truth the psyche cannot dispense with them, for they are the timeless patterns through which life expresses itself. When love overwhelms us, it is not merely a personal event. It is the same archetypal fire that once flamed in the cult of Aphrodite. When we are swept into chaos, intoxication, or ecstasy, it is Dionysus who whispers in our veins. When cunning ideas leap into mind, Hermes is not far. To deny these powers is to blind ourselves to the forces that govern our inner life, and yet they do not demand temples of stone. Their altar now is the human heart, their sanctuary the imagination and the dream. In dreams they return with full authority, gods with masks, animals speaking, figures of power and terror. The dream is a theatre where these presences remind us they have not left, only hidden themselves in symbols. To attend to dreams is to listen once more to their voices, and to grant them the dignity they deserve. The danger of forgetting is that what is not lived consciously erupts destructively. If the god of war is denied, then aggression may seize us in collective madness. If the goddess of love is ignored, desire may turn into obsession or emptiness. What is ignored above ground swells with power below. Thus, the neuroses of our time are not merely personal ailments, but eruptions of forgotten deities clamoring for recognition. To bring them back does not mean to regress to old religions or to bow before statues. It means to know that within each of us live ancient patterns, inexhaustible in their vitality. To acknowledge them is to enlarge the soul, to recognize that we are not mere individuals adrift in chance, but vessels of forces that preceded us and will outlive us. In this recognition, life gains depth, meaning, and participation in the eternal drama of being. There is in the human soul a dimension that cannot be reduced to instinct, logic, or social convention. It is that which moves us with awe, that which halts us before beauty, that which overwhelms us in the presence of mystery. This dimension is not created by man, though he may deny it or disguise it. It arises spontaneously from the depths of the psyche, manifesting as the experience of the sacred. Without this dimension, life becomes a flat expanse, stripped of resonance, an endless repetition of tasks without meaning. But when the sacred is alive within us, every act, however small, is touched with significance, as though it participates in a larger pattern. In earlier times, this reality appeared to man in the form of gods, spirits, and numinous forces. The temple, the altar, the holy grove were external symbols of an inner truth, that there is something greater than the conscious ego, something that commands reverence. With the decline of myth and religion in their traditional forms, this truth has not disappeared. it has simply turned inward. What was once experienced as divine presence in the outer world now presents itself in the inner world, as dreams of radiance, visions of wholeness, or the sudden encounter with meaning that breaks into the ordinary day. One might believe that the modern mind, with its reliance on science and technology, has outgrown the sacred, but this is an illusion. What is sacred cannot be abolished, it can only be forgotten or repressed. And when it is repressed, it does not vanish, it presses back upon consciousness in strange forms, anxiety without object, compulsions without reason, or the sudden emptiness that afflicts even the successful. These are symptoms of a soul deprived of its connection to the sacred. The psyche demands relationship with what transcends it. When denied, it sickens. The sacred reveals itself through symbols. These symbols are not inventions of the intellect, but spontaneous images arising from the unconscious. The radiant circle of the mandala, the healing figure of the wise old man, the luminous child, the descent into the underworld and the ascent into light. Such images appear again and again in dreams and myths, independent of time or culture, testifying to their universal character. They tell us that the sacred is woven into the very structure of the psyche. To neglect these symbols is to lose access to a vital source of energy and guidance. To honor the sacred in the psyche does not require the trappings of dogma or the repetition of inherited formulas. It requires openness to the numinous quality of inner experience, the courage to take seriously what the unconscious presents, and the humility to recognize that the ego is not the sole master of the house. When one bows inwardly before that greater presence, the soul is nourished. A life that has contact with the sacred becomes not merely a sequence of events, but a meaningful journey, a path that leads ever deeper into the mystery of being. Today, I stand before you not as a scholar proclaiming doctrines, but as a guide reminding us of what we have forgotten, those timeless archetypes, those gods, residing in the depths of our own being. In the hustle of modern life, the whispered names of anima, animus, the shadow, and the self have all but vanished into the mists of neglect. Yet their power remains potent, shaping our dreams, our fears, and our inner yearnings. How often have you felt tremors of feeling you could not name, a sudden shadow passing across your happiness, a longing for something beyond the rational, the measurable? These are the stirrings of the forgotten gods. They are not relics of bygone religion, but living psychical realities, yearning for recognition. Consider for a moment the anima and animus, the soul's counterpart in the unconscious, the divine feminine in the man, and the divine masculine in the woman. They were once revered as deities of feeling and intuition. Now they are repressed or projected, appearing only in neurosis or fleeting attraction. But when we meet them with consciousness, they become guides into the interior world. Then there is the shadow, the god of the hidden self. In old myths, the god of wildness, of ambivalence, of darkness. Now torn from consciousness, it speaks only through dreams, through destructive impulses. To ignore the shadow is to fragment the soul. To recognize it is to reclaim wholeness. And above all stands the self, the archetype of wholeness, the sovereign god of the inner world. In myth it was the god, king, the unifier. In the human psyche, it is that which orchestrates individuation, the sacred union of all parts of the soul. It hums beneath our consciousness, waiting to be known. Why revisit these gods? Because their absence impoverishes us. Without their guidance, we wander as pilgrims in a godless interior landscape. Life becomes fragmented, a mere performance of roles, a hustle devoid of mystery. To welcome them back, we must relearn myth language, not through piety, but through poetic psychology. We must attend to dreams, to symbols. We must dream again as our ancestors did, not to escape reality, but to interpret it, to sense the numinous within the mundane. In this Re-Mystification, or what we may call individuation, we re-inhabit ourselves. We turn from the external to the inner, from analysis to alchemy. The psyche enters its temple again. We permit those gods not only to dwell within us, but to guide us toward creativity, integration, meaning, purpose. Myth is not a fabrication of idle minds, nor a primitive attempt to explain natural phenomena. It is the oldest language of the soul, a symbolic record of its deepest experiences. Long before man discovered science, he already knew himself through story. In myth, the gods moved not in the sky alone, but within the human heart. The tales of creation, of descent and resurrection, of tricksters and heroes, were never merely entertainment. They were medicine for the psyche, healing the rift between consciousness and the vast unknown that surrounds it. When a people lose their myths, they lose the wisdom of their ancestors. The soul becomes orphaned, cut off from its roots, condemned to wander without orientation. We see this today in the spread of meaninglessness, in the weariness of a culture that no longer knows why it suffers or strives. But the old stories still live, waiting to be heard. They live in the unconscious, appearing in dreams and fantasies, demanding recognition. Each myth speaks not only of ancient times, but of an inner drama still unfolding in every human being. Take, for instance, the myth of descent into the underworld. Whether it is Inanna, Persephone, or Orpheus, the story is always the same. One must go down before one can rise again. This is the archetypal pattern of depression, loss, and transformation. When one is seized by despair, it is as though the soul itself has been carried into darkness. But the myth teaches that this descent has meaning. It is the path to renewal. To know this is to suffer with dignity, for the suffering is not meaningless, it is initiation. Or consider the myth of the hero who faces trials, slays monsters, and wins treasure for the community. This is not a tale of adventure only, it is the image of the individuation process, the journey of consciousness toward integration. The monsters are the repressed contents of the psyche, the shadow and its terrors. The treasure is the self, the source of wholeness. When we hear such a story, something in us stirs, for it is our own story, hidden under symbolic form. Myth, then, functions as a guide. It does not tell us what to believe, but shows us how to live. It speaks in images that touch the deepest layers of the soul, bypassing rational defenses. One may forget doctrine, but one does not forget the image of a hero's struggle, a divine birth, or a sacred marriage. These symbols penetrate, reminding us that our lives are part of a greater narrative. To approach myth in this way is to restore to the soul its medicine. It heals by granting meaning to suffering, by reconnecting the individual to the eternal patterns of humanity, and by awakening the imagination to its own depths. A life without myth is like a body without nourishment. It withers, but a life touched by myth becomes a living story, rich with symbols that sustain the heart. The movement of the soul toward wholeness is not a straight line, nor is it a simple accumulation of knowledge. It is a mysterious unfolding, a process that carries the individual beyond the boundaries of the ego into participation with something greater. This movement, which arises from the depths of the psyche itself, can be understood as individuation, the gradual becoming of what one truly is. Yet if we look closely, we see that this is not merely a psychological development. It is also a reawakening of mystery, a re-mystification of life. Modern consciousness has stripped existence of its numinous quality. The world is measured, explained, and dissected until it seems to contain nothing but facts and mechanisms. The inner life is treated in much the same way, reduced to habits, instincts, and social conditioning. But the psyche resists this flattening. It speaks in dreams, symbols, and visions, reminding us that life is not a machine but a mystery. Individuation is the path by which one rediscovers this mystery, not in the heavens above, but in the depths within. On this path one encounters the figures of the unconscious. the shadow with its darkness, the anima and animus with their alluring yet unsettling power, the wise guide, the divine child. Each encounter strips away the illusion of the ego's sovereignty and reveals that we are inhabited by greater forces. To meet these figures is to step into a sacred drama, for they are not inventions of fantasy but living archetypes that connect us to the timeless. Their appearance invests life with the weight of destiny. As the opposites within us are faced and reconciled, a new center begins to emerge. This center is not the ego, but the self, the archetype of wholeness. To experience the self is to sense an ordering principle beyond conscious will, a presence that shapes the life story with hidden meaning. The self is both within and beyond the individual, like a god that dwells in the soul and yet transcends it. Its manifestation is always accompanied by the feeling of the numinous. One is struck with awe, as though standing before a mystery too vast to comprehend. Thus individuation cannot be reduced to mere self-improvement or adaptation. It is not the cultivation of a polished personality, but a spiritual process that restores the dimension of sacredness to life. It asks us to live symbolically, to read events not only as practical occurrences, but as signs of a deeper unfolding. Each loss, each joy, each conflict is seen as part of a pattern woven by the self. This perspective transforms existence. What was once random becomes purposeful. What was once meaningless becomes filled with significance. To walk the path of individuation, then, is to re-enter the temple of the psyche. It is to rediscover that the gods have not died, but live within us as eternal images. It is to recognize that the soul is not a closed chamber, but a sanctuary in which mystery reveals itself. In this way, life regains its sacred quality, and the individual becomes not merely a spectator of existence, but a participant in the great mystery of being. Let us remember. Let the gods arise from our depths. Let the anima breathe through our hearts. The shadows speak truthful secrets. Self reign in our vision. In their presence you shall find not only wholeness, but the soul's true song. Thank you.